I watched the ground rushing up to meet the aircraft as we made our final approach into Manchester International Airport. I was still feeling that sense of self-satisfaction and smugness since clinching my first overseas order after my promotion to the international sales department. I'm not saying that I'd blown the clients in Amsterdam away, but I knew my presentation had been good, that I'd certainly made a good impression, and that once word got back my own boss would be just as pleased as I was. After all, it wasn't every day that the most junior member of a department brought in a deal worth 6 figures. I remembered hearing of the gossip in the department on my promotion. Old Albert Jenkinson complaining, Sean Crosby? That young upstart with the long hair? You can't be serious. And he wears earrings. That had come from Jenkinson's partner in crime, the equally quarrelsome and bad-tempered Stanley Marsh. Thankfully my boss, Charlotte Andrews, known as Callie to her friends, which I'm very glad to say included me, was able to see a little further than what I looked like and saw my capabilities. True, my hair falls well past my shoulders and I do wear a stud and a hoop in each ear, but I always wear suits, shirts and ties to the office, though granted I'm usually in a bike jacket and black jeans away from work, but away from work I'm not meeting clients. The plane touched down and taxied to its designated position. Now came the worst bit of traveling, the long wait for the luggage to be unloaded from the hold and processed through delay after delay. As I wasn't in any particular rush, I hung back and was one of the last off. Dressed in t-shirt and jeans, I was a little lightly dressed for the typical wet and windy Manchester weather, and I felt the cold as soon as I stepped out of the aircraft. By the time I was on the airport bus, I was soaked to the skin and shivering fit to drop. After going through the hassle of passport control and customs, I was in a foul mood, and it didn't get any better during the overly long wait in the crowded baggage hall. After 1,000 years, I saw my suitcase coming up the ramp and had to push through the press of people in order to grab it. As soon as I had it, I fought my way back through the muttering throng and headed out of the airport as fast as I could. Being soaked and chilled, I felt the need for a hot bath and a long drink, so instead of getting a taxi straight to the railway station at Manchester Piccadilly, I took one to the Metro Hotel, it being the nearest to the station. There was enough left on one of my credit cards to cover the one night at the hotel, and I had enough cash to see me through an evening meal and a few drinks in the bar. My rail ticket was already paid for and was safely in my wallet. So, having checked in and amused the reception staff by dripping all over the floor, I went up to my room on the 3rd floor. As soon as I was inside, I put the suitcase on the bed and wriggled out of my soaked clothes. I was literally soaked to the skin. I hurried through to the bathroom and turned the hot tap on, filling it with hot water. While it was steaming, I rang down to reception. "Hi, it's the drowned rat here. I'm going to dump my clothes in the bin if that's okay?" There was a laugh at the other end of the line. "Sure, go for it. I'll send someone up to dispose of them." "Thanks, tell them just to help themselves. I'll be in the bath." I hung up and was soon soaking in a bath filled with bubbles, feeling warm for the first time in hours. When I finally emerged, I was glowing pink and had a white towel wrapped around my waist. I noticed that the bin had been emptied and that there was a complimentary half bottle of wine on the bedside table. There was a note with it. "To the drowned rat, thanks for the giggle, the girls on reception." I poured myself a glass and then turned to my suitcase. I had a sinking feeling when I couldn't get the combination lock open. Had I used my birthday or the office extension number? I tried both and neither worked. Still, if all else fails, there was always the old trick I'd seen a million times in films. I dug into my shoulder bag and picked out my emergency kit, like sewing stuff, a metal nail file and a small first aid kit. It was the nail file that I turned to, angling it into the lock with the hooked end turning under the bar. There was a satisfying click and the bar flicked up out of its nook. The seconds soon followed, and I idly wondered why on earth luggage makers hadn't come up with a better method of securing their products. Just to prove the point, I snapped that bars back in and out again a couple of times. I threw back the lid and the modesty sheet and then rocked back on my heels, hitting the carpet on my behind. Where there should have been a carefully folded gray suit, there was a short red vest dress, and the lower I dug, the worse it got. Somewhere in the greater Manchester area, there was a young lady who liked to look sexy, wondering why she was supposed to be wearing a gray suit. I, on the other hand, was lifting out enough satin and lace to open a lingerie shop and enough in the way of tight tops, short skirts and dresses to open a boutique. Even the footwear said sexy girl, high-heeled strappy sandals, high-heeled court shoes, and a pair of ankle-high red patent boots that screamed tart. The only thing that was usable was a black leather motorbike jacket covered in zips. Even that was cropped at the waist, and when I held it up, leather tassels tumbled from the sleeves and across the shoulders. The top half of the case was no better, though there was at least a hairdryer along with half a hair and beauty salon's equipment. There were two skirts which were a little more modest in length, like they'd maybe meet the knee, but one was a layer of black lace over red satin and the other was red lace over black satin. The small jewelry case made me wonder, plenty of it but not expensive, and most was rather gaudy. I had a suspicion that I may have come to possess the case of a working girl. Maybe she'd been working on holiday? No, it was clean, so, a foreign girl coming into work in England? So my duty as a citizen was to report it immediately. Like hell, I began to suffer flashbacks. Flashbacks that haunted me still. Every now and again I'd wake up sweating from a recurring dream. A dream that had never happened but was at least based on fact. The fact being that from the age of 6 or 7 I'd been fascinated with my sister's clothes, not just the touch and the look but how they felt to wear. Being a mere 2 years younger than her and having a sister who was a devoted follower of fashion, it had been a young transvestite's dream. Not that I knew I was a transvestite, of course, not then. I discovered that word when I was 14, from a problem page in one of my sister's ever-so-grown-up magazines. The same magazines that had taught me about makeup and hairstyles, and through them and my constant raids on Samantha's wardrobes I became extremely convincing. I was never caught, never read, as far as I could tell, and by the time I was away living on campus at university I was dressed almost full-time apart from at lectures, and as everyone knows there are precious few of them. After graduating I'd made the huge step of leaving it all behind me. A ceremonial bonfire of Sion's huge wardrobe brought a tear to my mascara-free lashes. Sion, my femme self, hadn't only gathered a large wardrobe of her own but she developed a character of her own. Even to the point of going on girls' nights out with fellow students who to the best of my knowledge never knew. Whereas Sean can get boisterous after a drink, or to Sion was quiet and a little shy. Sean was articulate and measured in a debate. Sion kept her mouth firmly closed unless something really needed to be said. Perhaps that was why Sion was more popular with the girls than Sean was, something that still annoyed me. Ever since the funeral pyre I'd lived guilt-free and without the nagging paranoia concerning discovery. Now wouldn't the office gossips have had fun with that if they'd known? I was still wondering what to do when the faint sounds of my mobile phone intruded my thoughts. I pulled it out of my shoulder bag and answered it. Hello? Sean? Hi, you're back. I just got the confirmations through. You've played a blinder. Thanks, Callie. I said without much emotion. Hey, what's the matter? I thought you'd be out celebrating. Well, let's just say I've run into a bit of a problem. Everything looks fine to me, Sean. A note of concern entered her voice. No, the contracts are fine. I went over them again and again. I don't suppose you fancy a trip up to Manchester? Manchester? What for? It's Friday afternoon. I was looking forward to a nice weekend off. Callie, you're not going to believe this. I told her the story, not of my past, just what had happened at the airport. I was far from amused when she found the whole thing hugely funny. Isn't there anything in the case that you can adapt? She asked when she stopped laughing. Not unless you want one of your department arrested as soon as he steps out of the hotel. So what do you want me to do, Sean? Can you bring me a t-shirt, a pair of jeans socks and some trainers? You want me to call at your flat? The caretaker might let me in. My locker at work, there's some sports kit in there and a change of clothes. The spare key is stuck under my keyboard on my desk. Okay, I'll ring you back in a minute. It was a long minute, even longer when I remembered that there was a photo stuck on the inside of the door. I don't know why I'd kept it really. Sentimental? Better times? I don't know. What I do know is that it showed Sion draped on an ivory silk sheet at a photographer's studio. Hand propping up her head, smiling into the camera, long legs sheathed in sheer black stockings and feet in 6-inch heels. The black silk teddy with its spaghetti shoulder straps was slashed in a low V, trimmed with black lace which did little to hide the upper curves of her breasts almost to the nipples. Granted, they were perfectly weighted silicone breasts which were fixed to her skin by medical-grade adhesive, but they looked and felt totally natural. There was now telltale bulge visible, even though one leg was raised a little and the other pushed toward the camera. Thighs parted slightly revealed a very feminine-looking profile thanks to the very tight, extremely sheer thong that held everything back between the legs and tied up into the abdomen. It had been uncomfortable at first, even though there wasn't much to talk about, but gradually I got used to it, and even if I got an erection, nothing in the way of a bulge was revealed. Makeup perfect, hair perfect, left hand laying a red rose across her slim waist and flat stomach. It was Sion at her most glamorous, her sexiest, and she down the whole shoot for 300 pounds, and they'd been published in a lingerie catalog for a very well-known department store without there ever being an eyebrow raised or a suspicion cast. It wasn't so much the picture that would cause the trouble, it was what was written on the back in Sion's flowery handwriting. Yes, she even had her own style of writing. Sean, you really should let me out a bit more. Still, it's not such a bad body to borrow. Love, Sion, XXX. So, I had to hope that Callie would get my things, without looking around in my locker, without looking at the photo and without reading the back. Then I would have to hope that she would still bring me my things and not ask any awkward questions on the way back. How many hopes is that? Too many. The phone rang. Hi. I nearly choked. Hi Sean, I've got your things. I should be with you in about an hour and a half. You're a saint, Callie. I breathed a sigh of relief. What room are you in? 314, I'll ring down to the desk and let them know that you're expected. No, I've a better idea, I'll meet you in the bar. You what? I'll meet you in the bar, Sion. Callie, what are you going on about? I tried to think rapidly but didn't get much past panic. I'll see you soon, Sion, just you, not Sean, his job depends on it. I just sat and stared at the mobile when the line went dead. Then I drained the complimentary wine and finally raided the mini bar where the miniature vodkas came in handy. If Callie was going to be an hour and a half, I figured I had a little time to relax and let Sion come out from hibernation. One look at the hairs on my arms and legs was enough to get me moving. If she wanted Sion, she'd get Sion. Thankfully I had my razor in my shoulder bag, and soon enough all the time Sion had spent shaving arms, legs and everywhere that needed shaving served as good training. By the time I was smooth all over and my skin was absorbing the moisturizing cream from the suitcase, Sion was well on her way back. I took the hair styling kit into the bathroom and set them to one side while I plucked and shaped my eyebrows into soft arches. Sion loved doing it while I was at university, usually when the Sean half was a little worse for wear. Eventually no one seemed to notice that every now and again a feminine arch would describe itself across my brows. I used the curling tongs and dryer to create a mass of corkscrew curls, then held them back from my face with an Alice band from my benefactor's beauty kit. Then I set to work with applicators, pens, pencils and brushes, watching Sion appear in the mirror before me and Sean fading from sight. I didn't go overly sexy in style, the clothes would do enough of that. I kept things as softly feminine as I could, but with a touch of sophistication that was sexier than sexy in any case. Just a touch of foundation, then the first coat of mascara to my lashes with a style of brush that was new to me. It was more of a loop than a brush, but really gave my lashes a lift and a curl. The second coat lengthened them beautifully. A little eyeliner just at the outside to emphasize shape, and then a dusting of shadows, soft pink at the inner, blended into a bronze edged with a hint of gold. Lips lined and then filled with crimson, then just a little coral gloss over the top which gave a wonderful softened sheen. A dab of blush to either cheek, no more than a touch, then a light powder to finish and remove shine. Then it was nail time, first my toes, then my fingers. Coral pink for both sets of nails. I only wished there had been some false ones in the case. I'd often let them grow a little long, just so Sion could manicure them. In this event I had little option than to go with what I had, not a lot, so once the first coat of coral pink had dried I painted them with a clear sparkling gloss. From the case I selected a black lace suspender belt, a black satin thong, and over the thong I slid into a pair of black briefs with lace trim which were cut very high on the thigh. I was pleased to see that the thong trick still worked. No silicons to fit into the underwire black satin bra, still, there's a trick there too. In my first aid kit was a pair of surgical gloves. Filled to the cuff with warm water and whirled round a bit, the water fills out into the middle finger. Tie the cuff off as you would a balloon and you have a perfectly weighted bouncing breast. Granted, there is a slight risk of them bursting, but in a padded bra the risk is lessened and an underwire provides them plenty of support. Once I had my stockings on, I turned my attention to accessories, bracelets for each wrist, larger hoops in each ear, and a gold-colored rope necklace. In this case it was definitely less is more. Had I gone with much more than that, the word slut might as well have been tattooed across my forehead. I stepped into a black velvet body with lace trim to the plunging neckline. Most of my shoulders remained bared, but at least the bra straps were covered. I hate seeing bra straps on show when a girl is still wearing her top. Once the top is off I don't mind seeing them at all. I chose the red satin skirt with the black lace overlay and settled it about my waist and hips. There wasn't a belt that would go with it that I could see, so I was a bit concerned that my waist wouldn't be defined. From the chest down I looked flat and straight-edged. I solved the problem by using the sash fastening from a gold-colored wrap. Loosely tied it looked ridiculous. Wound round twice with the ends tucked in just on the skirt's waistband and it looked much better. Last, but by no means least, shoes. It just had to be the high-heeled court shoes, and once in them all the old sensations of stretched muscles, different way of walking and deportment in general came back in a rush. I opened the wardrobe door to look at my reflection in the mirror mounted on the back of the door. Sion smiled back at me, slipped the Alice band from the hair, and the curls fell in long corkscrew tresses. That was it, ready for anything. I packed a clutch bag with cosmetics, eyed the tasseled leather jacket and giggled. What the hell? I slipped into it and added vamp to the descriptive words that could have been used to paint the look. Size-wise whoever owned the suitcase and I weren't too far apart. I guessed that I was a little taller, she was bigger across the chest, hips wasn't much different, and I was a little wider in the waist. Shoe size was a different matter, the heels nipped but not overly, though, depending how long I was going to end up being in them it might get a lot worse. My throat bothered me a little, though I had never had any trouble when out before. I was generally in places where I was known or at least recognized as a regular, or with people who never commented that my trachea might have been a little more pronounced than it should have been. The only thing that might have done was a 4-strand pearl choker. I wasn't keen, but it was better than nothing, and there was the advantage that it squeezed my throat enough to give my voice a softer, breathless tone. All set for the off, but perhaps just one miniature bottle of brandy then, for Dutch courage. I downed the bottle in one go, picked up the clutch bag and the key card to the room and closed the door behind me before I could run back in. How did I feel going down all those stairs? That's right, the stairs. When you're back in heels after any length of time, going up or down stairs is the quickest and easiest way to get used to them again. By the time you get to the bottom or the top, you're moving easily and a lot more nicely. As to my feelings? Well, the ones I didn't like were worrying about how Callie would react to seeing me in the flesh. Frightened of her making a huge scene about it. Fear that I'd trip up halfway across to the bar or give myself away with some stupid action or other. As for any others? Those that I welcomed and enjoyed all over again, that sense of vulnerability, the feeling of the clothes upon me, of being who I appeared to be. Nervous anticipation, of being free from the threat of discovery by someone who knew me. Callie had found out, so there was no longer the threat. The way the high heels made my legs appear longer and slimmer, the way my boobs jiggled when I moved. It was, at that point more than it ever had before, the feeling that there wasn't anything for me to feel guilty about anymore and that the good things outweighed the bad tenfold. I crossed the lobby without incident, though I knew I had attracted attention. I felt no fear from the attention, I welcomed it and used it to fuel my confidence. When I caught the smile on the barman's face, I knew it wasn't a smile that was a precursor to laughter. His smile was a reaction to him having seen something he liked the look of. Something fluttered around in my head for a moment before I recognized it for what it was. Freedom, I sensed it and seized on it. With little time to prepare, in clothes belonging to someone I didn't know and was never likely to meet. In a strange place in front of strangers I had passed with flying colors, and nobody could take that away from me. Whatever that saying is about out of adversity? Well, I figured Sion had found her place in the world, and regardless of what happened in the next few hours, I was never going to lock her away again. I came to understand that she was an important part of who I was, and it might well be that she was the greater part of the whole. Certainly Sean could learn more from Sion than Sion could ever learn from Sean. After all, she's a much nicer person. And all that in the short moments it took me to reach the bar, perch on a stool and order a white wine and soda. Callie was a fashionable 20 minutes late, and I cursed myself for not having considered the notion. I waited for the pointing finger and the explosion of laughter. Waited for the screaming denouncement, waited for the slap to the side of my face and to be sacked on the spot. She smiled, leaned over and kissed me briefly on the cheek and whispered, "You're beautiful." At least I didn't fall off the stool. I saw that she'd come straight from work, still in her tailored jacket and skirt, white bodied beneath the jacket. "Will you be okay here for a minute while I go and change?" she asked with a smile. "I'll be okay, I can't exactly go anywhere fast at the moment, can I?" She took my key card to my room, and she was longer than a minute, but it was worth it. When she came back into the bar, her long brown hair fell straight to the middle of her back, short white mini dress clinging to her beneath the long black raincoat. "Ready?" "Ready for what?" "Dinner," she said simply and smiled again. "Where?" "Anywhere, anywhere we can talk, rather you talk and I'll listen." We ate in the hotel dining room in a corner booth where we were largely undisturbed except when we wanted to be. I began at the beginning, which is a pretty good place to start. As I spoke, I became more confident that she wasn't just pretending to listen. I found myself talking about feelings and emotions more than just the dressing. Callie prompted me with gentle questions until I finished by repeating the events of the day. As soon as I mentioned my locker to you on the phone, I knew I was in trouble. I ended. When I saw it, I wondered what you were doing with a lingerie shot of your sister. I thought it a little unhealthy. You do look very much as if you could be a female twin to Sean, though you don't look like Sean at all. If that makes any sense. Anyway, when I read the back of the picture, it didn't click for a moment, and then it was just me thinking, well, no, it can't be, but at the same time I was convinced that you and Sean are one and the same. She smiled brightly. That's when I knew that I just had to meet you. So, where do we go from here? Or rather, where do I go? I suppressed my need for so long. Now that my hand has been forced, I know that I was wrong to ignore who I am. I know it sounds like I'm talking about split personality, like I'm schizophrenic or something, but it isn't like that. Sion is Sean's feminine side. It just so happens that it's developed far further than most men ever allow. I tried to explain but knew I hadn't made a very good job of it. If I had walked into that bar without having seen the photo, I would have thought that I was looking at a girl who had a hint of Sean about her, no more than the briefest hint. As soon as you smiled, Sean disappeared and you were, well, you. So, do I resign? What the hell for? Callie exclaimed. Well, if it got out that, well, you know. Who knows? You and me. That's as many as we'll know, unless you're going to turn up for work in a skirt suit and announce yourself to the department. So, I just carry on as normal? I asked, half stunned. Sure, but I want to spend an awful lot of time with Sion. Callie reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. She smiled at my look of surprise. The way I was reading it was that she was coming on to me. I've got 2 questions for you, Sion, okay? Okay. 1, are you gay? No, I'm not gay. 2, are you planning to undergo any surgery? No, I'm transvestite, not transsexual. Why do you ask? Just making sure that I'm not wasting my time, Sion. I swing both ways and I want both of you. How about me tonight and Sean in the morning? I giggled. No can do, I didn't bring his clothes, brought mine and a camcorder though. Sean can wait until we get home on Sunday evening. She laughed at the look on my face. Sunday? Sunday, I rang the hotel before I set off, told them who I was and that Sean would be leaving in the early hours, but I'd like his room for an extra night. You know how hotels are when it comes to business accounts? They were only too happy to make the arrangements. So, shall we take a bottle of wine up with us, Sion? Our affair was interrupted 3 months later when Callie was promoted to a directorship based at the London office. Around the same time Sean resigned and soon after Callie took on her new PA. The PA stopped the office dead on his first day of work. The black motorbike jacket was hardly the regulation office wear after all. Oh, and the show of cleavage on display was entirely natural, though she still wore a very tight-fitting thong.